Uh, for those who have seen some of this, I apologize for repeating some of this for you, but I think there are a lot of others who will patiently go through this with me. I was told to speak on design as social capital, so I thought let me go into a little bit of theory before I start talking about my work. And so basically social capital is the existence of a certain set of informal values which are shared and therefore permit cooperation between different groups. And culture expresses their collective consciousness through design. It represents the community's collective expression of what they know in terms of their knowledge, but more important, what they value. And market economies, I'm going to distinguish market economies a little bit from modern economies, because today, maybe 15 years ago, it was our modern economies were completely market economies, but I tend to believe now that there is a lot of pluralism that is happening in our modern societies as well, which is challenging this whole notion that markets can monetize and productize everything. And in that kind of a framework, social capital gets defined as the reputation an individual commands in society that he or she can cash on for personal benefit. But what modern societies have done very well is to provide entrepreneurship and use technology as drivers for building solutions. Several cultures are getting eroded in this market system, where the market would like to talk about global value systems. But most traditional cultures place community interests ahead of individual gain, but finally in the interest of individuals. Social capital is the cumulative body of knowledge that a culture has accumulated and developed over generations, which they can use for the present generation's benefits. Two things that I think modern societies can gain, or keep striving, even modern societies today are trying to gain from, is to be environmentally conscious, is to use less. Not come up with yet another technological fix to try and solve the problem that you initially created. And a more spiritual concept that I think everybody would like to aspire towards is the more that you give selflessly, is the more you gain. I'm going to try, and these are the two basic principles that have excited Hunnarshala and us to engage with these traditional communities and bring alive some of these concepts when they build. So Hunnarsala's practice is, it tries to understand the core value and knowledge that different cultures represent in their built environments, holds it up as a mirror to them, because very often tradition and what they hold in terms of their expression is lost by the communities themselves. And then brings a rigor of science to first validate and then even upgrade these technologies. Tradition in Hindi is called parampara. The word tradition, unlike colloquially understood as rigid, actually means change. It means pare means to be away from the param that is now. So in fact, parampara or tradition actually means to constantly change. And that is what our traditional communities are also aspiring to do. But modern societies would like to either see them as heritage or would like to have them, have all of them in their own image of themselves. So what we have enjoyed doing is understanding these cultures and then trying to see how they can move forward. And finally, it's all about developing relationships and enhancing certain values and not really the buildings themselves. I love this quote from T.S. Eliot, because if we have to take culture seriously, we see that people does not need merely enough to eat. That is what we would like to see in our economies today, to just give them employment, but a proper and a particular cuisine. And so it all started with, in our case, with the resurgence of the bhunga. This is the circular forms. And these are the forms that did not break in the earthquake in 2001 that happened in Gujarat. And so when we used to sit down with a lot of masons to discuss as to what is it that they did wrong, because so many buildings broke down. Because in villages, it is not the architects who worked, it was the masons who were the main architects. So we used to start our discussions by saying that where is it that you messed up? And of course, for the various reasons that they gave as to what didn't work, what they said did work for the Bhunga is something that they said that the Bhunga was not part of the pastoral community's way of building till the 1819 earthquake. And it was only then that this was introduced, because a circular form in the lateral thrusts of an earthquake becomes like an arch. So it actually works much better than a square building, which tends to fold in and then the roof falls down in an earthquake. And that is why, because Kutch has always had, every 40 years, there is always an earthquake. So this became a part of their tradition. And that is what then we took forward with them. We made slip forms like these for them to, which were given to villages so that they could make their own walls for in rammed earth or in stabilized earth construction. The thatch roof on top changed to becoming a tile roof, which had its own implications structurally, because it wasn't a cone that it was sitting on, but on 5 points. And 1,200 houses got built by people like this. The difference was that we did not say that we did not promise a house to the people. We said we are going to give you so much money. And now it's entirely up to you whether you want to choose the Bhunga, or you want to choose a square building, you want to use rammed earth, or you want to use stone, or you want to use cement. And we had, out of the about 4,000 houses that we built during that time, 1,200 chose to make the Bhunga in these construction styles. I'll also take you to Koshi in Bihar after the floods over there in 2008. This is a bamboo house with wattle and daub. And one thing that most traditional buildings do is that they don't make very complicated connected structures. All of them have separate buildings, simple buildings that follow basic structural principles, and then you have they form courtyards in the middle. What we found was that in Bihar, in the Kosi area, people actually went to this area because the soils are fantastic. They bring the Himalayan fertility down, and then the rivers actually overflow every year and spread this wonderful fertile soil onto their farms. There's a saying over there in their local dialect that even if you put your finger into the soil, it'll sprout fingers. It's that rich. And so when you go and try and be part of such a dangerous environment where rivers are going to be overflowing, they had to decide as to how they want to live. And this is a kind of structure that we saw in Madhubani. And they explained to us that it's a frame structure, so it allows the wattle and daub to be washed away when the flood comes. And they have an attic space on top into which they put all their belongings, including their children, go and sit up there for about 7-8 days till the flood waters recede, and then they come down and put the wattle and daub back into the walls and start living again. So we said, that's a nice system. And the other thing that they do is their karigar, or their who builds these bamboo houses, is called the dabya. He has a single knife. The entire house of bamboo is made with a single knife called the dabya. Now, that was a challenge because they wanted to build over 100,000 houses. And there are fantastic work done in Central America in bamboo where you bolt things together. But the moment you talk about bolting, you start adding to the number of tools that an artisan must have. And then to be able to train all of them to be able to use so many tools, whether it is bolting, using a saw and things like that. So our challenge was that how can you make a safe house using only this knife called the dabya. They have various tying methods which we studied. They have 3 different ties which can make 8 different knots. All the thing that we introduced was this pin, which can become effective in case of earthquakes, in which the movement is so great that the pin breaks, then the tying system comes into effect. The other thing was that the bamboos had to be treated for the government of Bihar to allow this kind of a structure to be built. This was a whole program where we helped the government of Bihar to design their program and implement it. One thing that we did, this was something we learned from Nepal. What they do is they take a pesticide pump, actually, put chemicals into it, and then they take it on their cycles all over the place and put the nozzle onto the bamboo and pump this chemical, and on the other side the sap, that is the glucose, actually comes out. That is because bamboos are attacked by termites or things because of the glucose inside it. So if you are able to replace that glucose with this chemical, you have bamboo that can last up to 70, 80 years. And so these were entrepreneurs who went around charging 4 rupees a bamboo and treated the bamboos for the houses. One house requires about 100 bamboos to build. This was important because if the bamboos had to be taken to a centralized place for treatment, the entire system goes completely out of their control. There were also soils that required pile foundations. I won't go into this in great detail, but basically because this area doesn't have electricity, and how do you do piling without having machines to do that? So we took the whole issue to the people there. This is a system they used for making their hand pumps. So they actually take an auger, put their hand on top of it, and then with this bamboo they keep pushing the thing down and letting the water pressure release because the water tables are very high, and they can go down to 40 feet. So they did the same thing with for pushing the piles in. So again here the scheme that was offered was that you can make a bamboo house like this with an attic, you can make a brick cum bamboo house, or you can make an RCC house. The choice is entirely left to the people. At this point of time, there are about 20,000 houses that have been completed by this program. And what we find is that almost 60% are building the brick cum bamboo house, 35% are building only the bamboo house, and only 2 to 5% people are building the RCC house. The whole system was that if you're given 70,000 rupees, if you want to make a brick cum bamboo house, you have to put in 20,000 of your own. And if you want to make an RCC house, you have to put a lot more. So that is how these about 450 people, masons were trained. They do the entire supervision. There are no engineers involved in this entire construction. And that's how they make their frame structures. They put the attic. It's a prefabricated structure, basically. They put these bamboo into it. They put a thatch to insulate it a little bit. They put their tin sheets on top, they cement the outsides, and that's their house. Similarly, in Indonesia, this is the stilt house that we had done. I won't go into this in too many details. I have other things that I want to talk to you about. In Kashmir, what we found was a very interesting system where they have a base isolation system, where the house is actually not anchored into the ground, which is what most engineers want to do. They want to make things solid. Whereas this is a system where you have a plinth made in stone, and then they actually put thatch between the rest of the building on top and the plinth, so that it becomes a base isolation system. So when the earthquake happens, the energy of the earthquake doesn't transmit into the house. And that's a system that people use to build over there. What we also do is we make these into technical guidelines for governments so that they can continue to do their other programs using these technologies that were developed by people in that region. So there are many examples that I can give, but I'll quickly take you through some of the social capital that is used for equity. For example, in one of the villages in Gujarat, they decided that the entire village will be paid equally, both unskilled and skilled people, because for 6 months there was a moratorium that nobody can leave and go work outside, and the entire village rebuilt their own village. Now that's something that it comes very easily to them if they are given the opportunity, but it comes very difficult in situations like ours today in urban areas. We were discussing as to how to make the policy for this in Bihar for the housing, and so we took a lot of recommendations from different villages. One recommendation that they gave us is that people who don't have homestead lands in a tola, the village cannot start making any houses till everybody does not have land. So the village has to sit down together, make sure that everybody has land, and then the first house can be started. In Thailand, okay, I won't talk about this at the moment, but in Indonesia, another very interesting thing that was done was where after the tsunami, it became very difficult to know which are the property lines, and therefore what people were asked to do was to put markers on where they thought their property lines were. And then with the total station survey that had just come into the markets at that time, we made a map for them. They, in their Islamic community, they have a system where if they put up a certain resolution by the community on their community hall for a period of 7 days, and if there are no objections, it becomes law, irrespective of what the government of Indonesia has to say. So this was a system that allowed the entire maps to be made within a period of 3 to 5 days. Entire village maps were created. And they made these maps, got it resolved in their own communities, and then sent it to the governments as their final maps. I want to share this small example, which I find.
If you have 2 minutes.
Okay. Okay, then I'll skip this. But basically, we use a lot of the resilience of communities' own understanding of their social capital to face up to market mobilization. This was a pastoral community who have done some fantastic work in breeding buffaloes in their area. There's 2,500 square kilometers of land where these pastoral communities live. They are insisting that their land should not be bifurcated and it should remain as commons because it makes economic sense only then. They are the first community that has been able to have the National Bureau of Animal Genetic Engineering recognize their breeding practice and their breed of buffalo as a distinct breed. And this is a very complex process where 100 scientists go through this entire process and allowed this community this process. They have a whole interesting way of mapping grasslands, their own water management systems. And so, they're a community that was considered extremely backward, as most pastoral communities are all over the world. So as a strategy, this was a center that they built to showcase all their knowledge systems. So it's a resort that they built, which was built by all their different artisans. And that allowed all kinds of people, including Amitabh Bachchan and wannabe Prime Minister Narendra Modi, to come and stay here, and therefore be able to appreciate the way another culture lives. It has allowed them to be able to regain a sense of pride in their own community in the urban areas. Along with this, they also we designed a space where they can hold a mela or a fair for the entire pastoral communities of that area, where they celebrate their knowledge systems. They discuss the issues that are in front of them, and they invite the policymakers to that fair to be able to communicate this. But it is not so much to talk to them, but to talk to each other, because the entire pastoral community is wanting to remain together in this entire process. Another thing that we do is that the master artisans with whom we have developed these knowledge systems, we recognize their contributions. So we form them into companies. This is a thatch company of about 10 women. They do a business of about 25 lakhs every year, providing thatch services to urban situations. There are about 150 artisans who do mud walls, who are also formed into 8 companies that provide this to different architects and developers. These are some of the works that have been done. We have also started a small school now. These are all earth buildings, a small school for 16 to 18-year-old boys of artisans' children. So at any time, we have about 30, 35 young boys who are going through a 1-year training program in earth walling systems and in carpentry and recycling materials. Then they form their own companies, which we then link to different projects and programs. Another important thing that we do is that at the end of a building, that is built in urban areas. We have a small ceremony where we get the clients and all of them to recognize the contributions of the artisans. This is the school for the children that we run now. So, social capital of a nation or a humanity is expressed by its contributions to the culture the culture of other people's flourishing at the same time, and according to the contributions to the culture which arise afterwards. We hope to contribute to this architecture of compassion and a culture of trust and tolerance that networks and voluntary associations can emerge. Thank you.